within that, the idea that they have is just another lens to evaluate them. How much have they thought through this idea? If you poke this way, do they have good answers? If you ask about this question, do they have thoughtful responses? If not, why not? Where did the idea come from? What's their why? These are all things we try and dig in on at the stage we invest in, only because really you're backing a team and a dream.
This is not your typical venture podcast. We assume the listener or the viewer can Google simple things like stage, industry focus, average check size, etc. Guests and interviewers do consume alcoholic drinks during the taping of our show. So we do so responsibly, and we ask that everyone do so as well. So let's begin.
Hello, and welcome to Drinks with a VC. As always, thanks for spending time with us. I'm Vik Laquara, the general partner and founder of seed stage fund GreenCow Venture Capital. And as always, I'm joined by my co-hostess with the mostest, Bree from Burkland. Burkland is a lovely firm that provides CFO services for startups. So if you're in need, please check them out. Bree, it seems like 2023 has started out a bit rough for us on the health side of things. How are you feeling?
Other than a few minor colds, I've been doing well. I've been able to travel to Florida, Virginia, and New York, and I haven't gotten the big C.
Yes, well, speaking of the big C, I have had COVID and a long protracted recovery from COVID. I still feel like my lungs aren't at full capacity, and I've got off and on bouts of the brain fog, but
blaming brain. You've always had.
Maybe I've always had brain fog, or maybe that's just the alcohol. Our editor and co-producer Josh was also hit with COVID. So long story short, taping and releasing episodes has been delayed a little bit on our end, but we aren't going anywhere. And by the time we have released this episode, hopefully we'll be back to a more regular cadence of recording. We'll see.
Yes, we are. And while we're always excited to talk to our guests, I think this time you are doubly so.
Yes, I am very excited. So not only do we have our second guest of South Asian descent in a row, but I actually really consider tonight's guest as my brother from another mother.
So we're gonna have the episode "How I Met My Brother from Another Mother." Can
yes.
you tell me how you guys met?
Yeah. Well, we were very early in our careers, and we were in our first jobs in venture. I was at SK Telecom, and he was at Matrix Partners at the time. And Matrix Partners, for those of you just listening in and don't know, it's one of the more storied early stage venture funds in the Valley. He had just joined from Scale Ventures at the time, where he overlapped with a season 2 guest of ours, Alex Nyhanke. And at Matrix, he actually sourced Canva, huge win for them. He then went on to sort of develop his operational chops at payments platform Point. He was their first non-technical hire at Point, and helped the company scale to 130,000 merchants globally, along with raising $150 million plus in capital. And I believe they were eventually acquired by GoDaddy. I can't remember their amount, but that was in 2021. From there, he served as the SVP of strategy at Legion, a Burkland client. And Legion, for all of those who don't know, is an AI-powered HR tech company. And there, he not only helped release a product line, but raised nearly $100 million in capital for them. And now he's one of 3 founding partners at his own firm, Garuda Ventures. Him and his partners are actually just listed in the top 50 emerging managers. So congratulations to them on that. He's a graduate of Northwestern University with honors. He now lives in lovely Orinda with his amazing wife, Nisha, and 2 lovely kiddos. Please welcome the pride of Jakarta International School, Rishi Taparia. Cheers, Rishi.
Cheers. Glad to be here, guys.
Yeah.
And thank
But
you for that very wonderful and thorough intro, Vic. Only point of correction I will make is I didn't overlap with Alex at Hanky at Scale. I got him the job at Scale.
Oh,
that
So
is true.
I
That is
left
true.
to go to Matrix, and then I said, "Oh, you guys need to be talking to this guy to take the spot that I had." And Alex has gone on to do amazing stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is a strong correction. By the way, I'm already off to a really horrible start. So here we go. Here goes nothing, right, Bree?
Nick always has these really great openings. Or like I don't know if he loses his job in venture, he's either getting a job announcing pro wrestlers or at a strip club.
Mm.
Could do both at the same time.
Candy Rain is up next.
Could do both at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, while we are toasting to you, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a Hibiki Suntory. Can you see that? Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
I have gotten recently into Japanese, Taiwanese whiskeys. Actually, not even recently, since probably 2016, 2017. And so this is one of my favorites.
Fantastic.
Drinks with a VC. So if you want to nerd out on whiskey for a minute, feel free to nerd out on whiskey, because I can nerd out on whiskey too.
Oh, I can definitely not nerd out on whiskey. I just drink it and know what I like, and then know what I don't like. But I certainly don't have a refined palate. It's more, this tastes good, so I'll keep doing it.
Well, so I mean, I think the big question that I have typically around whiskey is it peaty or is it not? Like, what's the level of peat in that underlying smell and the flavor of it? And I typically like something that's not too peaty.
Same.
And
you
so
don't like fog in the mouth?
No, I don't. And I don't. But here's the other thing. I typically don't like my whiskey neat. I like to have a block of ice in my glass, and I feel like it smooths it out. And so I tend to just gravitate to those. And so let's go back to like the very beginning, 1987. Many of our listeners and viewers of this podcast may or may not know, but Rishi is from Indonesia, from Jakarta. And I know I've got so much background, but I know Bree doesn't. So I wanted to give you a moment to kind of tell Bree about your life in Indonesia. So from the time of birth through 16, I think you're 16 before you went to
17,
States, right? 17. So
yeah, absolutely. So look, 1987, born in Canada, in Calgary, Canada, in Feb, and then spent the next 3 years there. I don't remember any of it other than for whatever reason we have this picture of my family and I in the snow, and that's like seared into my mind, and so that's the only thing I remember. And then my dad, who worked for a large oil and gas company in Canada called Gulf Canada, was asked to move to Indonesia and help establish that facility, set up that office. And so we moved in 1990 to Jakarta. And that was supposed to be a 4-year stint, or as I'm told. And 4-year turned into 6-year, turned into then my dad leaving and setting up his own petrochemical facility with colleagues and friends from Indonesia. Turned into my entire childhood basically spent in Jakarta, and Southeast Asia being home. My parents were in Indonesia from 1990 to 2016, and then moved to Singapore in 2016, and were there actually until just the end of last year, and are now moving back to Canada to be closer to my kids, their grandkids, and my sister's kids, my sister's daughter who lives in Chicago with my sister, obviously, and her husband. And so the pull of the next generation, certainly bringing them back this way. But Indonesia was 22 years for my family. And certainly all of my my formative years, 3 through 17, I went to the international school there. First the British school, since as a number of Indians and the Anglophile nature of our beings, my dad wanted me to get a good British education, so I went to the British school first, and had a great British accent. that I have now since lost, unfortunately. And then when I was in the third grade, the school moved away. We moved houses, and so I started going to the international school, which was, for all intents and purposes, the American school. So from grade 3 all the way to graduating high school, I was at GIS, Jakarta International School, and had a blast, and still have so many close friends and relationships there. Go back to Indonesia now, in Southeast Asia, as of late, call it once every 3 or 4 months, and yeah, just such an important part of, as I look back, who I am today and kind of my worldview.
Do you model any of yourself after your dad and watching his formative years as a businessman in Jakarta?
For sure. Look, my dad is Superman, right? And certainly somebody I admire incredibly in terms of just what his work ethic was, how he was always able to do it with a smile on his face. I can definitely, if pressed, remember times that my dad was angry or upset and whatnot, but it takes a while. And I think he's like me, where it's relatively calm, cool, and collected. And then when he blows up big, and then kind of comes down. And so he's still one of my my closest advisors and best friends. I call him all the time about work stuff, fun stuff, investments that we're making, things of that sort. And yeah, it definitely modeled a lot of that off of him, and my mom. Look, my mom was an ESL teacher at the middle school and elementary school for 12, 14 years, and then she moved to Singapore. When I moved to Singapore, she again taught, and so both of them were always there, and just helping us with our schoolwork, helping us navigate through challenges. And so I am who I am because of those guys. And now as a parent, remind myself to thank them on an ongoing basis for putting up with all of my shit. Through the years.
Does he revel in you coming back to him and taking that advisor role to you? And is he as excited about kind of the work that you do and the companies that you invest in?
Yeah, no, I think he, that's just always been us. I think my relationship with my dad actually probably got a lot closer kind of in high school, but even after I graduated from high school and college, and as I entered the working world, just because then we had a lot more to relate on in terms of business and work and, things of that sort. Whereas my mom and I, still very close, but we're, she was the one I would turn to for, this girl broke my heart, or can you help me with this essay? Or, I'm trying to think of this on the homework, on homework, like, can I go out? What's my curfew type of thing? And so, yeah, I'm grateful to have, great relationships with both my parents and to be able to turn to them for different things.
So what was life like growing up in Indonesia? I know many of our audience members are probably American, and I'm very curious about what were your favorite foods? What was just a day in the life like for you when you were growing up there?
Yeah, look, it was, while living it, I didn't think anything was unique, right? It's like, get up, the alarm wakes you up, or dad wakes you up, or mom wakes you up, got to go to school. Okay, get ready, get on the school bus, get to school, go through class, recess, lunch, whatever after school activities, get home, got to do homework, and then kind of dinner and you go to sleep. And so pretty standard. But I think some of the things that were more unique and nuanced were just the fact that my graduating class had, so many different nationalities represented in the class itself. Best friends of mine were South Korean, Japanese, American, Indian, Taiwanese, Australians, Brits, and it was normal. But now looking back, I realize how not normal that is, especially talking to friends of mine from the Indian diaspora who grew up in the US. So that, but that was amazing, and kind of just opened you up to so many different cultures, foods, ethnicities, religions, and just, traditions that I think that just are normal now for me. also being an expat, there is a sense of, okay, you always wanting to make sure kind of families are secure and kids are safe and all that. So we would have an attendant on the bus, and we'd drive into school. And then Indonesia, fourth most populous country in the world, largest Muslim country in the world. And while I was growing up, particularly post 9/11, a lot of kind of terrorist attacks that took place targeting expats, hotel bombings, club bombings, and so on. That just becomes like a part of life. But you realize that, okay, what institutional changes were made as a result of that? Our school was actually the safest place to be in the city, period. I mean, we had 14-foot walls, bomb checks as you drive the bus into school. All cars have to go through this, security check. You park the bus behind this big wall, so in case there's a blast, you can't get impacted. And like all of this is like, oh yeah, fine, that's like school, whatever. But again, looking back, you're like, oh damn, that was different. And I remember I was watching some movie while I was in high school. And it's like kids in high school. I think maybe 10 Things I Hate About You or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a B-roll scene, and the bus just drives into the school and pulls up and kind of drops the kids off in the front of the school. And in my mind, I was like, wait, no, that's wrong. Like, where are all the checks and like all of that stuff? And then I realized, oh, that's just us.
That's just you.
That's not, normal in the sense of what everyone is expecting. And so those are kind of some of the different things, but it was, food. I still love my Indonesian food, fried noodle, nasi goreng, fried rice, mie goreng, tempeh, satay. Like it's so good. And so anytime I get a chance to go back, I'm just gorging myself on Indonesian food.
Yeah. In our questionnaire, kind of ahead of time, you mentioned sitting in your childhood home and watching episodes of Friends as one of your favorite memories from your childhood. Do you associate yourself as a Joey, a Chandler, a Ross, a Phoebe, a Rachel, or a Monica?
I've been told I'm mostly Ross, and so I guess Ross. Yeah, I guess Ross.
You guess Ross. Okay, fair enough. When you got to then Chicago after watching all of these American sitcoms back in Indonesia
on delay, by the way, so like the season would come out in the US and then we'd get the bootleg DVD like 6-12 months later, or it would show on the TV on our Star TV again, like on a delay. And so like, it'd be like season whatever 6 in the US and like season 4 in Jakarta. And so we were always a little bit delayed, which was hilarious.
But beyond the time delay, what was like the largest disconnect where you were like, man, no, life isn't really quite like this in Chicago as it is in Friends? Like, what was the biggest thing?
I don't know if I ever had one of those, only because I've been lucky to be able to travel even as a child. Yeah. Just growing up as an expat, like you're always leaving to go back home ostensibly. But for us, we would always travel. Kind of the US was always the summertime trip. We'd go to the US, we'd go to London, we'd go to Canada on occasion. And then kind of winter was always going to India to see my grandparents and my cousins and aunts and uncles, just because it wasn't so hot in the wintertime. And so you kind of knew that TV and the way kind of life was depicted in, Friends, or you pick your Pete and Pete, or, whatever the show is, You Saved by the Bell was, just like a dramatized version of reality, because you'd go and you'd visit and you'd see friends who live in the US and aunts, uncles, cousins, and whatnot. But I think looking back, the biggest shocker where I was like, that's just not real, was when I actually graduated from college and moved to New York, and then looked at the size of apartment that I had relative that I was sharing now with 2 other roommates, where we converted a 2-bedroom into a 3-bedroom by putting a fake wall up in our living room to make my bedroom. It was just that there was apartments were way too big. That's not real.
That's just not real.
Yeah.
I think we all felt that way about Sex in the City, by the way. We were like, come on, Carrie. I don't think she would have like a 1-bedroom closet with like a million pieces of like designer fashion, and she's a writer. Give me a break.
Yep.
There's just something a little fishy about those situations. So you had moved to Chicago and you had finished out high school in Chicago.
No, finished high school in Indonesia.
You finished in Indonesia.
And then graduated and then moved to Chicago or Evanston.
Right, Evanston. But how did you...
This glass is an Evanston kind of etched glass.
Okay. So, but what made you...
When I was 17.
What made you want to go to Northwestern?
A couple of things. One, I had two very dear friends who were also who I'd known since I was basically 4 years old in Indonesia, who had both were at Northwestern. So when I was going to be a freshman, they were going to be juniors and senior respectively. That was number one. Number two, big city with a big airport, so like you could easy to fly internationally. And number three, Big Ten sports. Because I knew I wanted to be kind of in and around sports. I knew Northwestern wasn't any good, but like, Ohio State's going to come, Michigan's going to come, like that'll be fun. And so those three things were largely what drove me to Northwestern. It was definitely one of those schools that like, when I applied, I was like, if I get in, I'm probably going to go here. And got in. And so, went to Northwestern and just had a blast, as kind of integrating into the U.S. life, and will always look fondly upon my time there, despite the frigid cold. And of course, moving from the tropics to the Midwest is definitely a little bit of a shocker. Like I remember the jacket that I had bought in Indonesia. Why, I don't know. To like be prepared was like not even close to cutting it. It snowed my freshman year. It snowed on Halloween. And snowed that year until April. And I remember the first time it snowed, and I'd never seen fresh falling snow before. I like ran outside. I'm in like a hoodie and gym shorts. I called my sister who's back in Jakarta. I was like, it's amazing. It's so beautiful. And like 1 week later, I was like, F this, dude. Like, no, thank you. And so it was a lot of fun. I mean, I met my now wife at Northwestern. Some of my dearest friends in the world. Who I'm very close with still today. I have neighbors who live 2 doors down, who I met, I met her the day before the first day of new student orientation. Wow. And it just so happens that her older sister's husband is now my partner at Garuda. And so Northwestern, I owe so much to.
Yeah.
Can we hear the meet cute of how you met your wife?
So my meet cute with Anisha. Let's see. It's my senior year. We are watching the homecoming football game. It's Northwestern versus Iowa. We were getting our asses handed to us. And so I'm standing in the bleachers with a good friend of mine who grew up in the Bay Area. All of a sudden, this beautiful, tall, kind of blue-green-eyed kind of girl walks up and starts talking to my buddy. And I'm like, I've never seen you before. And so like, I kind of interject in the conversation and we start chatting. And turns out her name is Nisha. She's a sophomore. She knows my buddy because she's originally from the Bay Area. And so they got it connected through mutual friends way back in the day. He had graduated already and was back to visit me. And we were hanging out. And so she came down to chat with him. I started talking to her. And then it was about to be halftime and she was going to leave. And so I asked for her number, got her number. She didn't ask for mine. And then she left that with her friends. So we watched the rest of the game. Northwestern comes back to win in overtime, which was great. And so now I'm like, this is my entry point into being able to message. And this is one thing I guess now is commonplace, but growing up in Indonesia, texting was the primary form of communication.
Right.
Because SMS was free, calls cost money. And so you would never call your friend to like, come down, I'm downstairs, or hey, where, it's always text. When I got to the US and I went to the Singular store on Chicago Ave in Evanston for the first time to get my cell phone number, and they're like, oh, would you like to add SMS? I was like, what are you talking about? And so like, it was minutes, you bought minutes, and then text was extra. Now, obviously, that's swung to the right direction, which is much more my kind of home base and safe. And so I'm a texter. And even in college, I was a texter. And so I texted Nisha something to the effect of, oh, you missed a great rest of the game. Northwestern came back to win. And then a little hyphen and Rishi. And then a few minutes go by and I get this text message back saying, I heard the hand got good. And that was it. And so now I'm looking at this message like, okay, interesting. I'm just going to blow right by.
Yeah.
So then we kept and whatnot. A couple weeks later, went on our first date, and that was October 19th, 2007.
That's, by the way, Bree.
We've been together ever since.
Sweet that he knows that. But isn't it sweet that he remembers the exact date and the time of their first date?
It's like 19th or 23rd. It's like in there. Like, I think it's we have so many anniversaries because we'll get into it later. Yeah. But it's like October 23rd, October 20th. It's like in October is our anniversary. And so 15 years later was 15 years was last year.
Yeah.
And so as she tells it, she's like, so she said, oh, there's this really tall Indian guy that I hadn't seen before. I'm a tall Indian girl. There are not many tall Indian guys, Vik. And
wow. You know what? These constant digs.
She came down to have a conversation with me, didn't get my text message. I didn't get my phone number on purpose. And then she leaves. And then I text her, and apparently there's like a whole group of girls now trying to reply to this text message. And so she was going to say, I heard the game got good. But in those days, remember T9 where you like hand and game are the same, and you have to press the star. She accidentally hit send instead of hitting the star. And so now she hits send, and all these girls are freaking out in her sorority. And like, I like just blow right by. And so then, and then from then on, I was always Sir Texts Alot in her like group of girlfriends. So that was the foray into us now being together with 2 kids at home.
That's amazing. Cheers to that. 15 years.
Cheers.
Sir Texts Alot married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we got married in 2014. Started dating 2007.
Where did your interest in technology come from?
Wanting products.
Just being the ultimate consumer.
Yeah, I just loved gadgets. Yeah. And figuring out how they worked and how to make it. I was always the guy that my family friends would call, hey, can you help set this up or figure out how to do this? And I when Apple first came out with iMovie, I was messing with that to put together all of our end of year varsity basketball highlight reel and track highlight reel and all that. Like, it was fun for me. It wasn't work. It wasn't time. It was just like, this is fun. Let me see how I can splice together different clips with what music to make it cool. And all that. And like, that was awesome. And so I was able, and that allowed me to combine kind of my love for sports and kind of my jock side of my high school life with then like, okay, maybe more like introverted, sit in front of a computer for hours, part of my life. And so it was just always so much fun. I was always tinkering.
I recently moderated a panel on the future of AI, and like it or not, kind of ChatGPT sort of dominated the discussion.
Sure.
Speaking in the context of you having 2 kids under 5, they're growing up in this age. What's your take on ChatGPT, and to what extent do you think that their education in the future is going to be influenced by AI and products like ChatGPT?
Oh, definitely going to be influenced, for sure. Just because, I mean, it's such a easy call and response, and the friction now to answers is so low. I mean, but you think about my kids love talking to Google. Like we have Google products around the house, and it's like HEY Google, and if I can't say the thing, then the stupid thing will activate. And they're asking all kinds of questions, like what sound does a wolverine make, or how many teeth does a T-Rex have, or stuff like that. And like for them to find that out in a world pre that would have been like, Daddy, can you look this up? And I'm like looking it up, or like they're waiting to get old enough to they're on a computer. Now they can just call and response in the way that they know, which is verbally, and get answers to questions. And like make the sound of a fart, and like make a fart sound, and then they laugh and like do it again. But even my 2-year-old, like she just turned 2 in December, and she knows how to like communicate with Google and set a timer and things of that sort. And so it'd be foolish to not think that this type of technology is going to influence the way that they learn and get educated. And I think it's up to us as parents to teach them when to use it, what to use it for, how to appropriately use it, when to, bring yourself into it more. And like that's now the new game. It's not yes or no, use it or not use it. It's how do we integrate it into your daily life? Just because, again, computers can process so much more and so much faster than a human can. And there are certain things that are going to be much, much better for computers to do than humans. It's like I remember, math in high school, where it's like, you can't use a calculator. It's like, okay, hold on. Like in the real world, you will be able to use a calculator. Heck, in the real world, you'll be able to look it up. And so like, why can't I use a calculator for this test? Oh, well, because you should know how to, okay, but why do you have to do that?
Right.
And so I think, education in general is still evolving. And I think, hopefully this new technology forces educators, together with technologists, together with, administrators, to think about, okay, what's the right way to integrate into our daily lives, because it's unavoidable. And just like you learn we learned typing. Remember, like, how fast can you type? And that was the game back in like middle speed, 100%. Absolutely. Now it's like, okay, it's typing. It's how to use tools like Canva for design. It's going to be how do you research a paper? How do you now validate that what you found online is real? And, like it used to be Wikipedia can't be cited because that's not a real source. But then that's like, hold on. Wikipedia is actually probably more accurate of a source than anything else on the planet. Can we cite Wikipedia now? And using Wikipedia can be cited in places these days. And so like, it's just an evolution. And, I think about it all the time is, okay, how do we slowly integrate the kids into using technology in a way that they are in control and not the other way around?
Are you worried that something like Chat GPT, though, could perhaps repeat false information over and over and over again, enough to create some sort of Mandela effect that now that's the real truth?
Yes, in the sense of like, I think people are predisposed to getting and repeating, or predisposed to path of least resistance. And so you want to get the information as quickly as possible. And if it feels cool, I'm just going to repeat it. But that's not unlike what you see on Twitter, where it's like, okay, so-and-so got in a car accident. No, I'm not. I'm fine. But it's like, because some tweet went viral and everyone's believing somebody got into a car accident. It's like, no, hold on, I'm right here. We want to believe. And so I think this is, again, back to the idea of like, how do you teach people and kids especially to be discerning in the data, to validate for themselves that this is true, to check and reference. And even then, I think you're seeing, now there's tools out there that are citing, like ChatGPT, that are citing their sources, and all. Like, I think that's great. Like, okay, if I can ask a question like, I'll make it up. What are did velociraptors actually have feathers? Right. And then it answers back, unlike a lot of the Hollywood depictions of velociraptors, in fact, they were more akin to birds and had feathers but couldn't fly and blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, here are the sources. Like, getting to the answer so much faster with data to back it up is actually very efficient.
Yeah.
And so now, okay, cool. Now what do I do with that? I can do a research project. I can make a picture. I can print it, like whatever it is. Yeah. That's actually beneficial because I firmly believe technology is all about efficiency and giving people back time to do with it what they want.
Yeah.
And so, technology is always going to be about driving efficiency in process. And so if that's the case, that's amazing.
I want to actually kind of just change gears a little bit. And speaking of kind of new environments, one of the things that I love about Rishi, and I hope our listeners and our viewers do, is look him up, because he's been incredibly open about conducting business in a post-COVID world, about being a father in a post-COVID world. First of all, Rishi, what is the best way to subscribe to your newsletter?
You go to taps.substack.com.
Okay.
Rishi Taparia, nickname is Taps. And so taps.substack.com, that's my newsletter. Twitter @Taps, and email and all of the others.
Okay. You should, if you don't get him already, you should get his newsletter. It's incredibly thoughtful in the way that he's put it together and curated the news of the day, and I think it's absolutely worth it. When I say worth it, it's free, but it's worth the time investment. There's one piece that you just wrote recently. You talked about being a naturally extroverted human being, and to quote you, "I feed off the energy of others. I thoroughly enjoy with being in a setting of hundreds of people." And you talk about it being your. By the way, I don't know who the friend is who said this, but during COVID, you found me. I'm not that articulate, but your friend for saying that. But can you talk to us a little bit about, as VC, and then as yourself, and I'm very much an extrovert. I feel you on this, right? Like, I've found my inner introvert during COVID. Talk to us a little bit about that event and kind of.
Yeah, look, that was the first time. So this is now, I want to say, March or April 2022.
Yeah.
And you've gotten your COVID vaccination, COVID boosters, and you've lived through, 2.5 years of not seeing your pod, my friends on my street, birthday parties for kids where, you sing happy birthday from across the table where there's cupcakes lined up and everybody gets one by one, like nothing. And now I'm going back to, and this is, part of the job, like no problem. Sure. But after largely being in a group of 25 or 30 people max for a period of 2 years, and I think just probably connecting with myself and kind of my own family in a deeper way than previously with more focused time. I remember kind of getting ready to go to the first muscle. I mean, interacting with anybody authentically with people and build a quick connection, asking questions that are not ones that are just throwaway. Oh, the weather today is whatever. But instead, again, truly trying to connect starts with having a desire to do so.
Yeah.
And so even with the desire, it was okay. Well, I'm going to go be around a lot of people I don't know. Are masks going to be on? Are masks going to be off? Are people going to be open and talking indoors or not? Like, how is it all going to play out? And I did, have thoughts of, okay, do I want to even go?
Yeah.
Despite having flown from the Bay Area to Wisconsin for the thing. And so that just, I think reminded me that things have changed, certainly for me personally, but I think for most people. And so just treat yourself with grace and let yourself ease into whatever it is new that you're doing that feels like you should be doing naturally like before. Like it's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
If you take a bunch of time off the gym, you can't go back. You can't expect to get back in there and run at the same speed for the same time or lift the same weight for the same number of reps or anything like that. Being social and interacting with others is a muscle, and so you have to rebuild it. And it was odd or striking in its difficulty, as you articulated, Vic, for someone who, this is our craft, this is part of our job, and something I naturally do. So that definitely took me by surprise.
I know Bree and I have been kind of like flexing that muscle during the pandemic. I mean, this podcast is part and parcel sort of a reaction to that. It's like, how do we stay connected and continue to chat with people and meet new people and engage with folks in the industry? I'm interested in kind of knowing if you have any tips. I know this sounds kind of cheesy, but do you have any tips for listeners out there that are re-engaging with folks on a broader scale than they're used to post-pandemic, about what kind of outcomes they should expect from going to events and what their goals should be from interacting with people?
Yeah, look, I think there's a big difference, and recognize the difference between connecting with someone over a Zoom or over video and being physically present now with another human in the same space. I certainly biased towards kind of being in person, only because I think magic happens when energies collide in the universe, and now like you're actually feeling somebody's presence, and you're able to pick up on the cues that they're intentionally or not putting out there, that your body has kind of developed and evolved to capture over millennia. I think that's pretty powerful. But I think recognize again what the objective of a conversation is, of going to an event is, and whatnot. Is it one-to-one? Is it one to a few? Is it I'm going to a conference and I don't know anybody? Am I going somewhere, but I have my crutch person that I am now going with, that I can always hang back to or fall back on if I like make a lap and then I don't see anybody, or there's no natural opening, so I'm going to go back and talk to my buddy that I came with, or my friend that I came with, or my wife that I came with, right? And I mean, the number of times that Nisha and I have used each other as the respective, like, oh, I'm just going to go talk, and like, is staggering. And so I think for me, it was easing into it, knowing what I'm looking out from it, whether it's a more authentic connection. If I'm talking to a founder, what are like, can I just get a sense of how they act, how they react, what their kind of aura is like? Do I feel like this is someone I want to work with for 10 years or longer? The type of person that, if they pick up the phone and I see their name show up on the dialer, like I'm excited to pick up the phone and talk to, and I think a lot of that comes through, how people carry themselves in person. And so, know what you want out of it. Don't put too much stress on yourself. And if you want to leave, just leave. It's okay. I used to stress out a lot about appearances. I should go to this thing. I should be here. I should, I can't not go to this because so-and-so invited me. They'll really feel bad if I don't come, and all of that stuff. That I can confidently say I've just left in 2019. And maybe that's, again, a byproduct of being a dad and just like having to, more rigorously and robustly cut down things so I can spend time on things that I want to be doing. But none of that matters to me anymore.
And when we speak about things that matter, you actually have the rare story of having really created Garuda. Certainly you met your partners well before Garuda existed, but you created Garuda really just pre-pandemic and then during the pandemic. And so I think there's a story there in terms of you during the pandemic evaluating this potential partnership with your co-founders at the time, and we've actually asked this question of a few of our guests, and Sarah Adler comes to mind as someone who famously was a part of Facebook before it went IPO, and then she jumped and went to Dropbox before IPOing, and then had the trifecta and went to Airbnb, right? So we asked her this, and we got into this a little bit, but I'd love to let's take the company jumping. Let's take a step back and not talk about the company jumping yet. But I want to talk about how you evaluating the opportunities to partner with James Richards and Arpan now at Garuda. I mean, what was the criteria that you used to say, okay, this is something I want to do, number one, and number two, these are the people I want to do it with?
Yeah, look, great question. I think looking back, absolutely the right decision. Looking forward, I don't know if I had any level of kind of insight or criteria, at least that I had kind of explicitly written down when it came to Garuda. Garuda started in 2018 as a kind of part-time nights and weekends passion project. James and I grew up together in Indonesia. We've known each other since we were 9-year-olds on a basketball court in the 6th grade, and dear friends ever since. We were in the same math, English classes, and he was a groomsman at my wedding. I was best man at his wedding. We were in New York at the same time. Then I moved to California. He slept on my couch in California. Then he moved out here, and so he's just one of those. He's one of my ride or dies, right? And we'd been talking about working together formally as adults and not just on a English project for a while. And it got to the point where, having been in venture myself and him having been part of YC, and now having recently sold his company, this is now in 2017, he sold his company in 2015 to TriNet, and was working there. You're just around long enough and people start asking you questions like, hey, are you investing? Are you, can you make these intros? Can you help me think about this thing? Friends in the network who are just starting companies or early in their journeys, obviously offering advice and feedback and intros, just having been in the ecosystem for a long time. And then we said, hey, why don't we support founders with more than just advice and time, but also a little bit of capital? And so we started investing off of our own balance sheets, and then realized how small they were and said, okay, should raise some outside capital to now do this in a more meaningful way. And so we raised just under $3 million for Garuda Fund 1, which was a micro fund. And we were investing, $50,000, $100,000 into startups in our ecosystem, founders in our ecosystem, and aiming to just bring, our kind of insights from the trenches, having built companies ourselves, having invested ourselves to our ecosystem and network, make strong connections, and use it as a way as operators to just see what else is going on in and around technology. Because, when you're building a company, you're just so heads down, focused on the problem at hand. And so, through Garuda, it was, selfish in a lot of ways, one of which being, cool, what are other people working on? What are their problems? How can I kind of take a breath and pause on what I'm working on and now help somebody else, solve a problem that they're having that maybe I have insight into. And so that was 2018. And look, over the next few years, had the great privilege of partnering with 32 founding teams out of that vehicle. We've invested a couple of times together, in fact, and just saying, we're partnering with great founders, great investors, and really being able to support founders in the ecosystem in a way that we hoped to be able to do, but now it proved it out, and also just drive the trust of some great early LPs, family offices, and friends of ours, and operators and executives. And so fast forward to 2021. and I was coming off of my second company that I'd worked at, that you mentioned, Legion.
Yeah.
My daughter had just been born, now, and so now we've got a toddler at home and a 3-month-old at home, and so I took a step back. It's the middle of COVID. It's, okay, what do I want to be doing with my life? And I spent 4 years investing, 7 years operating. And just trying to figure out, do I go to another company? Do I go bigger? Do I go smaller? Do I start something? And in the meantime, as I'm trying to figure this out, obviously still helping the portfolio companies, talking to more founders and so on. And at that point, Arpin, who is one of my closest friends, and now neighbor, older sister's husband. We've known each other for 10 years. We met at my friend's wedding in Norman, Oklahoma, at the beer pong table at the reception after party, to be very precise. He was a corporate, he was an equity research analyst after being a corporate lawyer, trying to break into tech, wanting to move out here in 2012. And, he did it all himself. I helped wherever I could. And then we've just been good friends since 2012. He was actually an early LP in the first fund while he was at Okta. He was at Okta for 8 years and helped grow that business from early stage to a massive publicly traded business. Yeah. He had just done the Auth0 acquisition at Okta. And so, $6.5 billion deal that now is like a capstone transaction. We had talked about working together in the past. And so I figured, okay, let me just poke him and see what he's up to. Yep. And so we chatted, this is now March 2021, about Garuda, about investing, about being partner, and or like what we're doing, and would it make sense to partner up together and explore the idea of going full time and turning a baby micro fund into a now full-time fund. And as co-founders would, we spent about 6 months just like working together, kicking around values, ideas, and kind of what stage, what size, what's the market timing, and so on. And ultimately decided, let's do it. Yeah. And so now the lean and mean team at Garuda is Arpin and I as full-time GPs and co-founders. James is staying part-time as a venture partner now in the new fund, as he has got his next company that he started that is actually the first investment out of the new fund. Yeah. And we're trying to build this for the long term, investing in pre-seed and seed and supporting founders as they go from 0 to 1 in areas that we know. Right. And I think that was important for us to be able to back founders in categories where we can be helpful, where we have deep domain expertise, where we have networks, where we have connections, where we've built and solved for these problems ourselves. Because, I think for us, we want to be value added investors on the cap table, and we won't invest if we don't think we can meaningfully kink the curve on the business and support the founders as they lay the foundation for the company. Yeah. And that was important to us, right? And that was all part of that 6-month kind of journey that we went through together, Arpin and I with James, on kind of what's the type of company we want to build. Because that's what you're doing. Starting a fund means you're building a company. Yes, you are raising money. It's not an operating company. It's an investment company. You're largely selling capital, and money is money. But how we present ourselves, what we want to live by in terms of our values, how we want to support our founders, is all kind of what's the difference in the detail. And look, having been on the operating side, having been on the investing side, having seen the good, the bad, the ugly in venture, and we've talked about this a lot. People ghosting, people not responding to emails, people doing a whole bunch of work and then only to invest in another. Like all of these things exist in venture today, and I think we can raise the bar. Yeah. And so that's what we're trying to live by here at Garuda. And so now kind of bringing it all the way back to answer your original question, what did I look for? I think if I look back, it was trust first and foremost. Like you need to have trust with your partners, and belief that, whether positive feedback, negative feedback, criticism, it's all coming from a place of trust and wanting everyone to be better. Values alignment in terms of how we present ourselves, what matters to us, and how, one of our things is like, we last, like we believe in, serving others first, and then only once they're full, so to speak, like then we eat. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the model of venture as it's set up. You get to 1x and then you get the profit share. And I think that's appropriate. Yeah. but and kind of this idea of service in general. Like, we know we are working on behalf of our founders and on behalf of our investors, and we have to serve these constituents and these groups to the best of our abilities, because only then will it make long-term value for us will accrue. And things like community, how do we think about the broader network? How do we think about partnership? These are all the things that we kind of went through. And what was great is we were starting from a foundation of friendship.
Yeah.
Because with James, 25 years, Arpin, 10, 11 years, I know their families, I know their kids, I know their, their in-laws, their friends, we've all hung out together. Like, so that helped a lot in terms of getting to comfort around essentially signing up for what I hope to be, the last job I ever do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were talking about your domain expertise, I'm curious. I know you've worked at Legion, which was a Burkland client. Our founder, Jeff, was one of the CFOs on my account. So, and it seems like you're a SaaS founder. What are the companies that you're looking for? And like, what are you looking at when you look at a pitch deck? What are the key things you're interested in?
Yeah. So look, the 4 areas where we invest as a firm are, thematically, intelligent applications. This is your SaaS, vertical SaaS, horizontal SaaS, API kind of first company. Bucket number 2, commerce infrastructure. So this is your fintech, your commerce, your, payments rails, your lending business, and so on. The new perimeter. This is where, security, infrastructure, developer tools, and the like fit in. And then climate 2.0. This is kind of as the grid continues to become more digitized, as you're spending, as more and more people are wanting to track emissions and watch those as closely as revenue. Like, that's where all of this stuff goes. And so for me, I spend a lot of time looking at kind of intelligent applications, SaaS businesses. A lot of time looking at fintech and commerce, and a lot of time looking at climate. But when you're at pre-seed, I mean, we've literally invested in founders before they were founders, before incorporation. And it's like, here, we've agreed on terms. Once you've incorporated, here's the term sheet, and, we'll invest. Really, it's the founder and evaluating the individual or individuals. And then how do we think about the problem they're solving, the insight that they have earned or learned about, and does it fit kind of our model and stage, right? And so, we call it kind of the TICMOS, TICMOS. It's like team, insight, catalyst, model, and stage are the big broad things that we spend time on. But really, it's the founders, and even within that, the idea that they have is just another lens to evaluate them. How much have they thought through this idea? If you poke this way, do they have good answers? If you ask about this question, do they have thoughtful responses? If not, why not? Where did the idea come from? What's their why? These are all things we try and dig in on at the stage we invest in, only because really you're backing a team and a dream. And so you have to recognize that and know that there's not going to be as much data, know that the markets that you're going after, while market sizing is a good exercise and an important one, is not a be all end all, because markets get created over time, and markets expand over time. And, I've seen that, certainly, Canva is a great example where it's like, okay, what's the market for, online design software that's not focused on professionals? Back in 2012, it's pretty small, but you could see your way to a big market. And of course, they've continued to crush and build an amazing business, and so proud of what they've been able to do, and grateful to have been just a small part of that journey. And so, it's really about the team and the insight, the catalyst that's driving them, and their why behind the business.
Between SBF and Theranos and Adam Newman and a number of large implosions in specific verticals and then across the industry as a whole, there's something broken about venture. And we've kind of talked at length about what might be broken about venture. Maybe I'm more interested in wondering if seed and pre-seed is sort of sheltered from what's broken in venture?
I would like to say yes, that seed and pre-seed is somewhat sheltered. If seed and pre-seed is invest or doing what it's intended for, right?
Yeah.
I believe that the early stage investing is largely intended to back great people who are exploring new ideas and new opportunities, recognizing that mistakes will be made, that risks will be taken, that most of the time there will not be a massive outcome, and that, you know, as an investor early stage, you will get compensated for that risk, sure, certainly, but that it's about, you know, trying to take big swings and manifest or help manifest something that may not exist, or that may not exist to the degree that could be, you know, solving a problem that could be solved, and so on. You know, when you're investing in that type of, with that type of frame, and know that, you know, you can largely lose 1x your money, and that's for the most part it, but the opportunity is great. You know, it's unique because you don't bemoan the ones that failed, you bemoan the ones that you missed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of the point. I think what's happened at later stage businesses or later stage companies, and, you know, a lot of capital that's been put into these businesses at growth stage and so on, is it's not necessarily about the fundamentals. It's based on, you know, a combination of kind of free money over the last, you know, 10 years, call it, a need to deploy capital to be able to then raise subsequent capital and kind of manage a larger base of assets that then drive, you know, obviously, you know, compensation for managers and the like, and just a more laissez-faire approach to the job that's understandable if you look at the circumstances that created it, where, you know, if you're not investing, why aren't you investing? Why aren't you seeing the returns? Why aren't you seeing the markups? What's happening? And all of the external pressures and internal pressures that faced, you know, growth funds over the last few years. Not giving them a pass. People got to do some damn work. But but I do think there was a shift that took place around kind of investing and in venture as compared to kind of portfolio management and fund management, and incentives not necessarily being aligned to long-term gains, but to short-term asset accumulation and compensation as a result. And that just, it creates a different incentive structure that may not be as fully aligned with creating massive and durable businesses.
Yeah. Do you think we've learned our lesson? When I say we, I mean the broader venture market, or we?
No, I mean,
No.
Yes, and I mean, people will know about it, and there's definitely more scrutiny now, especially as we go through this kind of market reset. But what do I think, you know, the world is cyclical. I think the pendulum has swung now away from founders with leverage, more towards investors with leverage. And I don't necessarily agree with either group having leverage. I think it should be, you know, equally balanced, but, you know, we're never going to get there. It's always going to be a constant moving pendulum. And so now, you know, where FOMO was, why aren't you investing? Now it's like, why are you investing? And, you know, the market has certainly gotten much colder than it was as compared to years.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think mistakes will happen, and these things will continue to happen, only because, again, the incentives aren't always perfectly aligned between LPs, GPs, and founders.
Yeah.
And people have been conning people since the dawn of time anyway. And so, you know, you can't necessarily catch a con artist. As well-intentioned as you are.
What do you think about some of these larger firms like Sequoia and others that were kind of caught up in the SBF stuff, doubling down on their seed strategies and raising and deploying new funds now towards seed stage companies.
I always wonder how much attention they're actually paying to the businesses.
Hmm.
And look, recognizing that they have the capacity to move markets, because when you are as such large scale and you have so much capital, and you are incentivized to invest in as many companies as you can to then get access to subsequent rounds to be able to put in the real investments out of core funds that drive returns. They have the capacity to lift valuations beyond what they should be. They have the capacity to dictate terms that may not make sense to the individual founder, and so all of these dynamics exist. And so look, a certain type of founder is going to be attracted to that. Some other founders are not. And so, when we, as a small firm, a young firm, early in our life cycle, establishing our reputation, our meeting with founders, we call that out. It's like, look, we don't have, we do a reverse pitch, particularly when we get to conviction. We have like a full on deck that we send to founders. And, as part of that, it's like, look, this is what we're not. We are not a mass fund with armies of people and armies of support staff that can help you along these vectors.
Yeah.
Because that's, we just call it out. We will not win if that's what you're looking for. And if that's what you're looking for, you should go to one of the big kind of multi-stage firms that have access to capital. What we do have, though, is principals that are, as in, myself and Arvin, who are as heavily invested in the success of your business because you're part of our origin story. Yeah. And your success is our success. Yeah. And so we will have the context, we will have the insight. We want to roll up our sleeves and get down and dirty with you, because that's also, as part of being operators, what we want to bring to the table. Yeah. And so you will have that access to us directly. And let's go from there, because the reality is most people who are raising from seed funds from these multi-stage firms are not getting the names that are on the door onto their boards. They're not getting, the principles, so to speak, on, with deep and detailed understanding of their business. They're going to get rolled up into some line item somewhere and be reported on by a junior person, which is, again, nothing wrong with that. Having been a junior person in venture, I'm not going to knock the value that junior people play and the importance that they have. But it's not the same level of experience and expertise as, picking on A16Z, for example. Like, you're not going to get Mark Andreessen on your board as a seed company. That's just a reality. And nor should you, right? He has better things to do with his time and his money. But that's, I think, where there's kind of a misalignment sometimes. And certainly a lack of clarity around what you're getting. So I always encourage founders to, understand what you're looking for. Yeah. Ask the questions of, like, who will I be working with? How often will I be able to interact with you? What are the things that you believe are deliverables that you can offer me, and so on. And again, just be very aware of signaling risk that exists when you're taking money from a multi-stage firm. I know everyone says, no, there's no signaling risk. No, that's a bunch of BS. There definitely is signaling risk. If a fund that can lead an A doesn't choose to lead an A, you can say all you want about, we're testing the market, but Sequoia didn't let anybody into WhatsApp. Just saying. And so everyone's going to ask, and just be aware, be ready for it. And go in with eyes wide open.
Yeah. This is one of those times where maybe one of the few times I can remember, even in 2008, it wasn't like this, where, investors were putting more of an emphasis today now more on how much run rate do you have versus what's your MRR. And it feels like there's some real concerns, obviously, over that, and brings together the whole seed extension part. You were talking a little bit about what if you have a high profile investor that has the means to lead a Series A and doesn't. What does it say if, those folks don't invest at a seed extension round? What do you think is going to be the largest concern? What's the largest concern for CEOs now that are in sort of that, they're playing that game of Goldilocks, right? Where they're not quite big enough for the Series A. But they're bigger than a seed, and they're looking at extension. What ought to founders be focusing on right now?
Being in control.
Yeah.
Because if you're in control of your capital, you know what your metrics are, you know what your numbers are, and you know when cash out is, then you have the levers that you can pull to try and, as much as possible, be in control of your own destiny. Yeah. If you're trying to fundraise when money is running out, you're staring down kind of 2 months of burn, and then you may not be able to pay your people, you may not be able to pay your vendors and so on. That's a harder place to be.
Yeah.
And so, my advice is always don't try and optimize wherever you can, but don't try and be half-turned too cute on when you're going to raise and how you're going to raise and so on. Make sure you give yourself enough time, and make sure you are planning for, have contingency plans in terms of, where capital could come from, where can you get people to prepay from a customer perspective if you have customers, sure. What's the bare minimum team size you need, all hard decisions. And, this is a lot of, learning in 3 months time that normally take founders years and years to go through, just because of the nature and the speed at which the market has changed. It's all very difficult. And ultimately the decisions lie with the founders and the CEO. And it's not easy. And so things that I think about in terms of like, just be organized as much as possible, understand your business at a deeper level than maybe you do already. Don't, run towards the risks and run towards the challenges and the problem areas. Don't hide, and don't not think about them because you don't want to get stressed out, because that's again, very natural human tendency, but that's going to lead to surprises. And, as much as possible, don't surprise investors, employees, customers. Be open, be transparent. It might seem counterintuitive, but again, anybody who's invested in the business, is working for the company, has an incentive to make sure it's successful. And so, those are kind of the three big things that I talk to our founders about all the time. I don't want to be surprised. Tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly as an investor, so we can figure it out. Because the more time you give, me as an example, the more time we have to kind of plan for all the contingencies and explore and knock down every door and figure out ways we can keep the business alive, assuming it is, of course, something you want to keep doing. Yeah. And that's the other big thing. So many times founders don't have it in them or don't want to keep going, but then choose to because they feel bad. They feel a sense of shame. They feel a sense of failure that then causes them to try and persist for longer than they should. Yeah. I always ask the founders I work with, what keeps you believing in the opportunity and keeps you motivated to keep going? Yeah. And what are you looking for in terms of milestones, metrics, insight, spidey sense on something is working that has you wanting to keep doing this? Because you're incredibly talented. There's so many other things you could be doing. Starting a company takes a little bit of crazy or a lot bit of crazy. And so you have to be a little bit crazy to do this. Why do you believe the way you do? Yeah. And that question is often prompted a lot of, and then you pick at that a little bit, and then you realize the founder doesn't want to do it, and they're burning themselves out. They're running themselves into the ground. And there's just a fear of what's everybody going to think? What about my employees and all? Okay, let's get you over that hump. And now we can decide how to solve all of those with grace as well. Yeah. And do it properly. And, but you can't be fooling yourselves, especially not right now. And that's important as well.
So interesting that you say that, because, we both have a screw loose.
Oh yeah.
Right. We're
building
the firm, right? Building a new firm. And, so point blank, did you ever see yourself as starting your own firm when you initially left Matrix to join Point and be an operator? Never. So it wasn't ever hey, because I've had mentors, Eric Benamou, Benamou Global Ventures and ex-CEO, chairman of Palm and 3Com, he told me, "Hey Vic, you have to go out and build something, and then you'll be ready to be a better investor." That wasn't on the back of your mind. You were just thinking, "Look, I just want to operationally, I want to go somewhere, I want to build something." And
Well, so different questions. I, in the back of my mind, after 4 years in venture, knew that I thought that investing could be a thing that I did for a long time.
Sure.
But this is also back in 2012, 2014 times, and Dreessen was just coming up. The more operators were now investors. You had guys like Josh Elman, who were, transitioning away from working in startups and now investing. Now he's back in startups. But, I was going to say Hunter and Satya. Well, they should be called Sunter. I should bring
Sunter
it up.
is good.
Sunter is good. Yeah. These type of guys. And so I saw the writing on the wall and said, okay, if I'm going to ever be a GP someday and be able to do this for a living and for the long term, it probably benefits me to have a level of understanding and empathy for that journey. Just because then I can, be more than an energetic, smart young guy who hustles, but can also bring to the table tactical expertise, networks, and a different type of connection.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I moved out to the Valley in 2010, I was actually looking for operating roles to begin with. I did not think I'd get into venture. I got into venture through a dear friend of mine, a guy named Vijay Nagapan, who's at MHS Capital.
Yeah.
He introduced me to Ben Fu, who's one of my, mentors and brothers, who hired me into Scale.
Yeah.
Or at least pushed me through with Rory and Kate. And ultimately I worked at Scale. But I did not intend to get into venture. I didn't know what venture was when I moved out here in 2010. And so, 4 years in venture and then 7 years operating, I was at a crossroads in 21 saying, okay, what do I want to do as the next phase, so to speak?
Yeah.
And the way Nisha tells it, and I don't disagree with her. I was hand wringing for a long time. Like, oh my, we've had this conversation. Like, should I do investing? Should I go work at a fund? Should I go work at a company? What should I do? Oh my gosh. And finally, I think it was sometime in July around Nisha's birthday, I told her, okay, I'm going to go back into investing and I'm going to go do Garuda and turn it into a full-time fund. And she's like, finally. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, of course you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that. I just had to let you get there on your own because I could have told you that back in January.
Wow.
It just goes to show when you are, certainly punching above your weight class and marry up, your better halves, see things faster. And so now I realize that in building Garuda, I get to flex a little bit of the operator muscle because it's the systems, it's the tools, it's the processes, you're building a company. It's just a different kind of company, but also then have the investor kind of working with founders, scaling up your capacity to support not just one company that you're working for, but many companies, have the context, leverage and cross-pollinate across multiple companies, talent, ideas, hires, best practices, and so on. And because of the diversity of category, get exposure to so many kind of seemingly unrelated categories, but then that allow you to see trends that are taking place on the security side in big enterprise that could be related to, point of sale financing in the MSP market and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, all, companies particularly at this early stage, they're just going from 0 to 1. And that's what you have to do that is consistent across category, across company, across founder. You just need to do basic blocking and tackling as well. And so that's what's so fun about it. Yeah. And, look, it is, rare, and Vic knows this, we rarely complain because we recognize this is a privilege to be able to do this job, to be able to meet people who are thinking about setting out or are setting out on their own visions and their own journeys and trying to bring something new and pull the future into the present. and we get to decide if we want to partner with them and support them and help them as they grow their businesses and be a small part of their journey as they get started, and hopefully turn their dreams into reality. Like, that's, what can you ask for than that?
Yeah.
And this is all a choice. I chose this. And, yes, there certainly, I have, as any founder, entrepreneur, investor, whatever, you have your down days, you have your good days, you have your days where you wake up and like, what the, I don't want to do any of this inbox right now.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it is a privilege to do this job.
Yeah. One last question before we get into our 5 questions bit. And I alluded to this earlier and bringing up Sarah Adler, and again, she worked at Corp Dev for Facebook, and then Dropbox, and then Airbnb.
And it's fantastic, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know Sarah.
That's incredible.
Sarah.
Yeah, and deserving, and we love Sarah. Absolutely. You have also had multiple jumps, and you went from venture fund to venture fund, and then you went from Point to Legion. Now you're at Garuda. And all of them have been successful. They've been right at that right time and at that moment, and you've had success. And I think there are a lot of people that are listening or watching this podcast, and they want to know how you evaluated those opportunities and what factors you considered in order to go to that next opportunity, because there's so many people out there right now, and we're clearly at this time where Google has laid off 12,000 employees. You've got Amazon laying off folks. You've got all of this swath of layoffs that's happening. And I think people might really benefit from, maybe you haven't formalized it, but internally, what was the thought process that you went through when you were evaluating each of these opportunities?
I always viewed new opportunities as through a few lenses. One was, why am I looking in the first place? What am I unhappy with in my present circumstance, in my present role, or what do I wish I had more of? Because that's largely the motivation behind a search. When you get the inbound and you're like, oh, I'm going to take that call. Why do you take that call? What's the thing that's piquing your interest? And generally it's because something is missing. And I always try and say, don't run away from a job, run toward a job. And so what that means is, you might be in a situation which is tough, where you're not happy, your boss is an asshole, the work is mundane and boring, or you're not learning, and so but if you're running away, you're more likely to jump to something that's not exactly right, versus taking your time and being really excited about the opportunity you're going to go to. It's tough when they're up so many times. Your first day at a new company is the best day, and then it gets worse from there because you realize all the shit, all that stuff. That's actually not great. And so for me, it was through a few lenses. One, who am I going to be working for? And can I learn from this person very specifically? Because I very much believe in the value of mentorship, guidance, learning from through osmosis, seeing how people interact and behave, and picking up on things that, while are not explicit in your teaching or education, will in fact impact the way you act and respond, to things going forward. So that was big. Who am I going to be working for? Next is, what am I trying to learn from this role over the next, 1, 2, 3, 4 years? And I try to chunk it kind of with those types of goals and kind of with that kind of defined frame, only because that's how I think I'm going to get better. And so if I can't define it, then let me try and define it by saying, okay, and this is a harder thing to process, certainly when you're in a seat and thinking about the next job, is what's the thing after this? Because if I know where I want to go from here, I can work backwards to the skills that I'm looking to develop, the network I'm looking to build, the people I'm looking to meet, which I guess is the network I'm looking to build, the type of either technical training or actual experience that I need to build to then go do the next thing.
Yeah.
And so that's also part of the framework. Is like, what do you want to get from here? Is it new experience, new exposure, new sector, new stage, whatever it is in terms of just pure learning? And then it's, okay, where am I in terms of, compensation, salary, bonus? Do I think there's an opportunity to create wealth at this new opportunity? And so, those are largely kind of some of the things that I would think about. But knowing that I can't beat myself up for making it if I achieved the things that I wanted to on the learning side by going here and not going there.
Yeah.
As an example, because lots of people are faced with lots of choice, and we get into this habit of beating ourselves. What would have happened if I'd gone to Stripe in 2014? What would have happened if I just taken that call for COO at Figma in 2015? What would have happened if, all of these things, right? But you can't, that's a fool's errand, because you'll never know. And if you achieve success around the metric that you set for yourself way back when you took the job, then you've been successful. Everything else is just gravy. Yeah. Whether it's the money, the expansion, and so on and so forth. And so that for me was always important. Speed of learning, and who am I learning from? What do I want to get out of this? And do I believe this can propel me to the next thing? Which I would try and think about before taking the next thing. And so, my advice to, and I've had many of these conversations over the last few weeks and months, is just take your time, because moments like this are tough, because there's a sense of failure on the individual, when the reality is the companies made decisions that they felt were in the best interest of the business, and a lot of the time didn't have anything to do with you or your performance or how you were evaluated or anything like that. And so now, again, a lot of the big companies especially gave packages and so on. So take your time to process. There's going to be a sense of grief and all of that. Like, process those emotions, and then see, okay, what it is you want to do, and really use the time to think about where you want to grow, what skills you want to develop, and so on, and then try and find opportunities like that. Now, of course, easier said than done in a lot of cases, particularly when you're financially constrained and so on. But as much as possible, think about who you're learning from, what skills you want to grow into, and does this opportunity meet your financial needs, whether now or into the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I feel like in a way, Rishi really loses out, because he's part of this whole new format where, we give less gifts out. We still, gave him the Burkland welcome package of alcohol, thank you very much, and treats and all these things, but we didn't give him like the the VC unboxing segment and all that other stuff. So it's okay though. It's all right. We still have that last final segment that everyone knows is coming. It's our version of 5 questions. Are you ready to play 5 questions?
Ready.
All right. Bree, do you want to start us off?
I sure will. If you could do it all over again, would you rather be an investor or a builder?
Builder.
Okay.
Ooh.
All right. What movie best fits the future of the human race? WALL-E, where we've all degenerated into an obese state due to anti-gravity in the metaverse. Avatar, where we are dominated by this quest for resources, new worlds, walking and around in avatar bodies. Or The Matrix, where we're all in a simulation.
None of them are hopeful enough for me. So
none of them are hopeful enough.
Optimistic enough. So I would, out of that set, Avatar.
Ooh. Okay. He's doing well in theaters right now, so good choice.
Crushing in theaters right now. James Cameron knows what he's doing.
Would you rather spend 1 million on a trip to Earth's outer orbit or 1 million on a vacation to anywhere on planet Earth?
Latter, anywhere on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So much to be explored on Earth.
Yeah.
I don't need to go out yet.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think
Be
we
a
asked
sick
this
vacation
next.
too.
We asked this next question because I think it's really more about like, can you separate the art from the artist? And this is like a variation of that. But would you invest in Adam Newman's flow?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Actually, no, not out of the, I mean, certainly not out of Garuda.
Yeah.
It's just the wrong return profile for the fund. It doesn't fit the parameters for us pre-seed and seed, looking to drive, every investment looking to potentially return the fund.
Yeah.
What is Adam Newman and Flow? If you separate the players from what he's actually doing, a tech-enabled REIT, right? And so when you're, Andreessen Horowitz with billions and billions of dollars under management, and you need to make sure you're not necessarily either shooting for, a 5 to 7 to 10x fund. You just need to make sure you don't lose investor money and you drive, better than, call it 25% IRR. And so can you get to a 2.5x net, maybe 2x on that number of dollars? You're going to do just fine. And people are going to come back and keep investing. And so what is Adam Newman building? A REIT. And it's just tech enabled. So like, cool, you're probably not going to lose money. And if any of the technology works and the efficiencies work and all that stuff, then maybe you get some multiple expansion and can 2 to 5x. Like, yeah, you're probably going to do fine.
Yeah.
And so nothing wrong with the concept and all of that. I just think that the players in the the players in that game specifically, make the story more interesting.
All right. Our last question, Bree.
Last questions. Is there what is the one deal that you passed on that you wish you hadn't?
I don't like to call them deals because they're founders, their ideas, their livelihoods, their dreams, visions, hopes. It's a company. What is the one partnership opportunity or investment opportunity that I wish I would have?
It's the one company that you wish you hadn't passed on.
Plaid, for sure.
Yeah.
I met the founders in 2012. Introduced to me through a mutual friend who I'd gotten to know really well. Said, hey, there's this guy this team raising for this idea in fintech. You should meet him. Went on a walk in Palo Alto. Thought it was interesting, thought very hard, and it feels like the banks are going to shut this down or at least limit access and whatnot. And so had a conversation about it with our partnership at Matrix Partners, and they all agreed, and that probably was enough. Like, okay, fine, I'm not going to try and push this through, having just convinced the partnership to back a boyfriend, girlfriend out of Perth, Australia for design software in the cloud. And so we ended up not pursuing. And of course, Plaid has done amazing, amazing stuff. Yeah. So that's one from kind of back in the day. And then a newer one, ClearCo at the time, Clear Bank. Met Andrew D'Souza through great mutual friend and advisor and mentor, and Charles Hudson, who is amazing. And they were raising the Series A at the time at a $29 million valuation, I think it was. And just got to know him. He's great and was building something really cool. But this is one of the ones where I fell victim to kind of the parameters we had set for the fund, where we said we'd do pre-seed and seed. We'd be looking at early, this type of stage, and it was like later, and like, Henry. Okay, Joe chose not to invest, and of course, gone on to do amazing.
But you don't go through that fool's errand, and you don't.
Right.
You're a cornerback in the NFL. You're like, okay, on to the next route. It is what it is.
Yeah, look, I think I try and look at I try and look at the why behind
Yeah.
my choosing not to invest.
Yeah.
And we try and like when we choose not to partner, when we pass,
Mm-hmm.
we make it a point to write kind of feedback. We write the whys down. We pass. Again, I've said the word grace a lot of times today, but that's part of one of the things we talk about is like offer feedback, because again, having been on the other side and received no feedback from investors who passed, or having received BS feed, like give me something I can work with. So I try and give the founder something I can work with, and I'll say, look, this is what I think. And so I'll look back at those emails. I'll look back at the decision making, the rationale, and if I feel justified in that, okay, still a good pass, but what did I miss?
Yeah.
What question could I ask myself the next time to maybe see an opportunity where it previously didn't exist, or where I didn't think it existed, or where are my priors blinding me to opportunity that could exist going forward?
Sure.
And so that's how I try and prosecute and process, but you missed. And it's okay. Like, it's going to happen. You're going to have an anti portfolio. If you're doing it right, you're going to have a lot of companies that you miss on investing in that turn into big winners. And so then it's okay, how do we just continue to get better? How do we improve the algorithm, so to speak? How do we improve the questions? How do we get tighter on our process? Things of that sort that help us get better, that allow us, again, to continue to deploy capital and partner with founders over a long, long period of time.
Yeah. I get more pissed off about the companies that are within our parameters and that we passed on than those that were outside of our parameters, and we would have had to have
for sure,
skirt the rules a little
100%.
bit, obviously. So
100%.
You can't look at ClearCo and go, oh man, that was it. I'm sure Charles kind of gives you maybe a little shit about it here and there every once in a while.
No, it's one of those no. Again,
we had him on.
Yeah.
Last season before, I don't know.
He and I talk regularly, and again, he's just I have the benefit of having been an investor before, building a lot of networks and relationships, and seeing dear friends grow into senior roles at firms, and owning running their own firms and owning their own firms. So just having a great set of mentors and people that I can pick up the phone and just like, okay, this is what do I do here? How do I think about marketing this company? How do I think about systems and processes? How do I think about building your top of funnel? All of these things, because I think there's a lot more collaboration, certainly amongst a certain set of peers that I really appreciate. And again, back to the building, and Charles is certainly one of those. And so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Rishi, this has been a lot of fun. You've been more than generous with your time tonight, and we thank you for that. I know I can speak for Bree, and just saying you've been amazing and transparent, and we really appreciate you being on the show. From a personal standpoint, I can say I absolutely knew that you were going to have your own fund one day. It was just a matter of time, and every one of your founders should be thanking the person up above, whoever it may be, that you're an investor and you're on their cap table, because you're one of the best investors that provides value add and heart and authenticity, I think, more than anything, to the equation. So we're just so happy to have you on. And as we do always on the show, right, Bree, we're going to give you the next minute to toast us out, and this is your opportunity to bring to attention anything, or just say thanks to someone, or call out a portfolio company, whatever it might be. This is your moment, and we'll raise a glass.
Well, cheers. Thank you first to you both for having me on, and for giving me the opportunity to share some more of my story, and for the great discussion, dialogue, questions. Vik, I've known you for, God, I forget how many years. And you said at the top, brother from another mother. And Bree, it's been a pleasure getting to know you as well. For me, I think it's just all about building community. and I would not be here without the generous time, attention, love, and care of the people that I've been able to surround myself with, that have been in my life, whether current or past. Starting first and foremost, obviously with my family and my better half in Nisha and my wonderful kids. But everyone's had an impact on me in some way, shape, or form. And so the idea of being quote self-made is ridiculous. I think we're all byproducts of our circumstances and our people. And I'm just incredibly grateful for the people that are around me, my partners, the founders that I get the chance to work with, the investors that have taken chances on me. And so just a big thank you to everyone who's listening, who, whether you know it or not, has had a meaningful impact on me. Thank you very much, and appreciate all of you guys for taking the time on your Monday to chat with me today.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Catch full episodes of Drinks with the VC on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and on YouTube for video. Be sure to subscribe for the latest episode drops.